Okay, and with that, we are live for episode 185 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some Enterprise today. It feels like we have haven't talked about Enterprise in a while. So it's nice to get back into that realm a little bit and do a fun episode, fantasy draft no less. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we're kind of going back to our roots with the fantasy draft. The last few have been more unconventional with like the pool of episodes we're dealing with. We did the big season 4 one that was like a mix of all different shows, and we did two-parters. We did notorious episodes, and we kind of started this whole thing out with picking a season and really looking at that season. So this is the first one of them we've done in a while, and I think Enterprise is the only show that we hadn't touched yet. So in
Nice.
that way, so we're kind of checking the box off, and like I said, kind of going back to the conceptual roots of one of our kind of recurring ideas, which is cool. And definitely, I agree. I'm excited to be talking Enterprise, and we haven't had like an Enterprise centric topic in a while, so should be a good time. But before we get into that, let's do a real quick rewatch recap. Where are you? I think the last episode you talked about was Covenant. So you're
Yeah. So I've actually made some pretty decent progress. Um, so I've watched looks like 4 episodes this week. It's Only a Paper Moon,
Prodigal Daughter.
Prodigal Daughter, let's see, Emperor's New Cloak, and Field of Fire. Um, yeah, so pretty, at least for my money, some I think pretty solid episodes and some just maybe middle of the road episodes for me. One thing that I've noticed, at least kind of when I'm getting towards the middle of the season, is there's a lot of Dax centric. Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say maybe episodes, but storylines. She feels really right in the thick of things, which um, I'm fine with. Just something I noticed with this season. She feels really connected to a lot of people. Feels really fast, but yeah, I think it does some interesting story of um, interesting things, exploring the Dax backstory as well as the Esri backstory. Right, we get to go back the
Yeah.
episode.
Prodigal
Uh,
Daughter.
yeah, Prodigal Daughter. To go back to her, where her family is, and get some insight into that, and some Emerald Chain stuff, kind of.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, and then we get to see obviously the Dax stuff, and the kind of film noir esque episode where they're trying to figure out who the murderer is, and, which I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But Bill, how's sorry to ramble on about what I've been watching. But Bill, how's your rewatch going?
It's going. I watched since the last time I did this. I've watched Vis-a-Vis, the Omega Directive, Inquisition, and In the Pale Moonlight, and His Boy.
Nice,
I think so. About 5 episodes. Um,
nice.
yeah, some really good ones. I love Inquisition. I think that's obviously like become more and more of a ground zero foundational episode with introducing Section 31 as like newer
Yeah,
Trek has used Section 31 more. It becomes more and more of a factor in the greater continuity from Enterprise all through Discovery and into Darkness. Um, yeah,
yeah,
I've always really liked the Omega Directive from Voyager. I think
yeah.
that's a really good 7 of 9 episode, really good Janeway episode,
Mhm.
introducing some new facets to Starfleet, which is kind of unexpected in Voyager, where we're so far removed from Starfleet to get like new, uh,
Yeah,
you know, kinds of things like that.
protocols.
Yeah,
Yeah,
protocols like
yeah.
that. Yeah, where we're so removed from what's going on in the current times.
Mhm.
I've always been a big fan of that one. I think, like I said, Jared Ryan's really strong in that kind of her having her sort of religious experience, striving to capture the thing that Borg everywhere are kind of going after the perfect thing, kind of achieving perfection. Um, and of course, In the Pale Moonlight is pretty.
Classic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always feel like I come away from it more convinced that it's the one for Deep Space Nine, like the
Mhm.
top of the castle, and earlier in season 6 is always Far Beyond the Stars, and I feel like I watch Far
Yeah.
Beyond the Stars, and I'm like, that's the one. And then I get to In the Pale Moonlight, and I'm like, maybe it's
No,
number
that's the
2, maybe
one.
it's In the Pale Moonlight. But
Yeah.
they're definitely both classics and right at the top of the heap for Deep Space Nine for me. So, been a good run.
Decent little run for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we should get right into it. These drafts
Let's do
are
it.
always
Longer.
interesting times. Yep.
Yeah.
We do have to flip a coin. We always do this, and we have to figure out who's going to go first. But while do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do
kind
that.
of do some intro stuff. So we're going to do 8 rounds. There are 25 episodes on the board, so that's going to divide this as close to in thirds as possible. We always like to try to get it into a spot where we each have 2/3 of the episodes, and that there's a third left undrafted, so that it's kind of evenly spaced. At least we try for that as much as we can if there's 2 of us. So that's where we'll be going here today. We're going to flip a coin to see who's going to go first, and we'll just flip back and forth, go with the episode that we are most drawn to. And I think the cool thing about this topic is that it's a different way to attack the which episode do I like better, or top 5 list, kind of top 10 list kind of thing. It's not quite as clean as just coming up with these are the episodes I love. There's a little competitive aspect to it, and there's some anticipation of what you're going to do and maybe having to choose episodes strategically. So, one of my favorite things we do here on Trek Live.
Yeah, and there's plenty of backlogs as well. So if you come away from
Yes.
this episode saying, "Hey, I want to see more of this," there's a
The
bunch
whole
of different.
playlist.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, check out our playlist page, and you'll find one with about 10 of these, with all kinds of formats and kinds of episode lists.
different people as well. Bill, call it, I guess.
I'll call heads.
Okay. It is tails. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to go first. We'll put you up on the board with your number 1 pick here as soon as you're ready.
So for my number 1 pick, I'm gonna go with Shuttle Pod 1. I know that there's maybe another episode or 2 that some people might pick as their number 1, but for me, this was a better fit. My kind of attitude with these drafts is, and it's kind of the same way I look at episodes as well, is like if I were to go on a desert island and be able to watch this for the rest of my days, like that's the way I would pick these episodes. That's the way I pick these episodes. Maybe they're not always the best, cited as the best, but I think rewatchability is big for me. And for me, I could just watch this. It's great. Kind of stranded story, so it kind of fit pretty well if I was on my desert island. So I'm gonna go Shuttle Pod.
Yeah, it would have been high up on my board. Definitely in the conversation for that number 1 pick for me. I think it does some really cool stuff for both Trip and Reed, and kind of sets off their pairing and sort of maybe it's their storyteller kind of with the starting of a friendship and putting them in a position where there's conflict and desperation, and I think it gets that dynamic off and running and becomes a kind of a staple for the rest of the show. And I think it takes advantage of the premise of the show. It puts the characters in a position that is kind of unique to Enterprise, the way that they're sort of really stranded in deep space and left alone. And I don't know that the other shows would have credibly been able to put 2 characters in a shuttle and had them feel so isolated and hopeless. I've always loved that about Shuttle Pod 1. We have Jimmy77 in the room and Cyber Honey in the room. Good morning to you both.
Welcome, everybody.
Cyber Honey likes your Shuttle Pod 1 choice. Jimmy77 is naming off some episodes, one of which I'm going to go right into. I'm going to pick Dear Doctor, which has increasingly become a controversial choice, I think, over the years. I think Dear Doctor and Tuvix are the 2 episodes that hit a nerve for people because of the ethical questions and where you come down on these things, and how reprehensible do you find some of the choices that are made. But I find the drama to be really compelling. I think it's a really great exploration of Phlox. It's got a unique tone to it with the Phlox voiceover writing the letter to his colleague.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got a kind of whimsical feel to it that I think is appropriate for his character. I've always really liked that. I like Crewman Cutler as like a pairing for him, like having it be a like really young female officer who befriends him and is kind of bringing him along and making him comfortable with humans. And it's a classic Star Trek ethical dilemma where there are no easy answers, and it's as much about the debate you're going to have after it's over as it is, with what's on screen. So.
And I think that's a mark of a good Star Trek episode is if it's making you do all those things, making you think, not sitting well with some moral decisions. So yeah, I think that's a mark of a good episode. So.
Right. It's exactly how I feel. What do you got for round 2?
Round 2 pick is going to be... Bill and I didn't really discuss this in the draft board I sent him. It's technically one episode, and so the episode numbers are technically off by one. But I'm gonna go with Broken Bow.
It's a great pick.
As my next pick. It's one of my favorites series premieres. I mean, it's just there's a little that I have to I can't find more than one or two things that I don't like about it. I feel like it's got everything. It's got action where it needs to. It's got some great character beats where it needs to be. I just great relationship building stuff with the crew members, and then also with the Vulcans as well. I enjoy Archer's just readiness and eagerness to get out there every time. So yeah, I love Broken Bow.
Yeah, Broken Bow is up there for me as one of the better pilots. When you factor in how revolutionary it had to be in terms of the design work, unlike one of the benefits that Emissary and Caretaker both had was that it was taking place contemporaneously with what had already kind of been established with the Next Generation. So there were certain aspects to the design work, the basic look and feel of the time and place was kind of already established. They got to do some new things and break some new groundwork, but this was a totally new, going way back in the complicated nature of going pre-TOS and trying to find that comfort zone between, feeling more primitive than the original series, but credibly ahead of us. I think that those design challenges were met successfully for my money, and it was always a point of controversy back then, but I think it's aged really well and become one of the best assets of that show. I just think it's a great looking series with the production design and the props, and there's just so much stuff in that episode, going even beyond the fun story and the successful introduction to all these characters and the world of the show and New Time and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a great pick, and I probably would have picked it myself right there. So
nice.
Can't argue with it. For me, I'm kind of torn between two here. I think I'm gonna go. If I'm remembering like my old rankings, I think I probably rank Shockwave a little bit ahead of the other episode. I think about. So I'm gonna go Shockwave.
Okay.
I think Shockwave's a really good season finale because of the way that it builds on the things that have happened through this first season. There are consequences to choices that have been made. There are, things coming to a head that call back to the first episodes, and it's putting Archer on the hot seat for mistakes that are made, which I think is one of my favorite aspects of the beginning of this show. Some people find Archer to be bumbling and he makes too many mistakes and he's too naive. I think that's an asset. I think having the first captain be very eager and excited and gung-ho and sometimes bumping into walls and screwing up.
I think that fits to me, but
yeah. And the character's got to go somewhere. He's got to start somewhere to end somewhere, and I think the show successfully charts a path for Captain Archer, and the way that the first season builds on that is a critical, you know, part of that. And Shockwave culminates a lot of these decisions and puts Archer in a position to really test his confidence and not only his own confidence in himself, but the confidence in the mission and humanity's place out there. Are we ready to be doing this? And should we be out there on our own? Were the Vulcans right all along, kind of holding us back and saying we're not ready? So it's exciting. There's a lot of good action in it. It's got a great cliffhanger with, you know, building on the temporal Cold War stuff that started in Broken Bow. So I've always felt that Shockwave really is a successful season finale and a great cliffhanger. So I'll go there. But I feel like I left an equally great episode out there that I'm sure you're about to grab. I'm assuming. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you are wrong. I'm gonna go with the Andorian incident.
That's the one.
There was another, and maybe Bill's gonna pick this right after me. There was another episode that I was, silently trying to deliberate over. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Andorian incident. When I think back to Enterprise, just overall, I think one of my favorite aspects is the exploration of the Andorians. I think Enterprise does a great job of establishing the just the species and making them feel similar to what we've seen before, but also some new wrinkles, and that they are not to be trusted, and which will be shown in other episodes in the later season, this season and in other seasons. But yeah, I think it's just a great jumping off point for the Andorians. So, and it's a fun episode. So
it is.
Can't say much more.
No, I think it's got one of the all-time Star Trek twists at the end that the Andorians were right all along. I think that's a killer sort of mic drop moment that the show is going to do unexpected things, and everything is not as it seems, and
Starfleet and they're not always right.
They're not always right. The good guys that you think are the good guys might not be the good guys. And I think that's an asset for the show. I think it did a really good job of putting the audience on its toes early on with the way these different species are going to relate to each other and who's on the right side of history and who's not. And the all those kinds of things, the Vulcan stuff becomes such a critical component of the show later on. Like, that's such a through line for the rest of the series and their relations not only with the humans but with the Andorians and what's going to build towards the Federation. That's such a foundational aspect of the series, and the Andorian incident really sets a lot of that off. So that was the one I was torn with between Shockwave and the Andorian incident for sure. So can't argue with any of that. And this is going to be an interesting season because I feel like for me, we just kind of hit a tier. Like, I think that would be the 5 episodes that are off the board right now are my definite top 5.
Top tier, yeah, for sure, yeah.
And now we're getting into there's a lot of good stuff on the board, but separating this next batch of episodes is a little tougher.
Big time.
So, and we're just I only have 2 so far, so we're just in round 3 and have quite a bit to go. So it's gonna get tough and challenging, which is what's fun about this, I think. I'm gonna go with Cold Front. Which is a big temporal Cold War story. And I've always been a much stronger component for that arc, that storyline. I think it's underrated and maybe gets beat up a little bit more than it deserves. You know, it definitely doesn't have the greatest finish, but I think early in Enterprise it adds a flavor and I like Crewman Daniels. I think he's a good guest star and a good recurring character. I like the way they introduce him. And it's another way to put this crew on its toes as the first ones out there and have them not always have the upper hand. Like, they're constantly being outfoxed and outmaneuvered, and not only by their contemporaries, but these guys coming back in time and trying to mess around with history. So I think there's some interesting stuff in Cold Front, and it
Mhm.
sets some groundwork that's important for the rest
Yeah.
of the show.
Yeah, it's definitely laying the foundation to what we're gonna kind of work through the series and all the way up to the last season, I think. So, yeah, it's definitely pivotal in our Enterprise for sure. Yeah. For my next pick, I am gonna go with. I kind of mentioned it before. Last pick that I was kind of silently um, deliberating over which episode I should pick. I'm gonna go with Silent Enemy. Um, I like this episode for a couple different reasons. Um, One, it being it's they're working through some growing pains. They realize they think they need to get a little bit more armor and a little bit more weaponry on the ship. Which I mean, can't blame them. They do feel so. I like them working through that, and I also like and there's a few examples in this season, but it's there's a sense of like fear, and also not everybody and every person is uh, going to be friendly. And exploration, when you're exploring, or you're going to run into some um, I don't know, not friendly people. So yeah,
Yeah,
I like Silent Enemy
me too.
for those two reasons for sure.
Silent Enemy's a good one. It's got a great score. There's some really good action music in that I've always really liked. Definitely an ominous threat with those
Yeah,
non-humanoid aliens.
yeah,
I've definitely always been a proponent for that. And again, I think it takes advantage of the premise of the show, and I think that's an underrated aspect of this, especially early part of the first season, this half of episodes. I think they did a good job of keeping that front of mind, keeping the characters on their toes, putting them in positions where they don't know what they're doing,
yeah.
and they mess up, and they're outmatched, and having to be innovative, and sometimes ask for help, and I think that's a big asset for the show. Um, I think I'm gonna go with. Man, I have such a tough time, like I said, separating some of these.
Yeah, it's
from each other.
tough.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go Fallen Hero, which
Okay.
I've always kind of been pulled toward. I really like the guest star Fiona Flanagan as like a big time old school British character actress. She's been in a million movies that I'm sure if you're watching this, you've probably seen her in something. She plays the Vulcan ambassador. It's sort of
Hmm.
a caper, like sort of a, the Vulcans are telling Enterprise that she's being recalled because she did something bad, but it turns out it's much more complicated than that. So there's some subterfuge going on with some innovative and unconventional diplomacy happening on this conflicted planet that the Vulcans are involved in.
Yeah.
Really driving home that the Vulcans are not always, you know, the
Trustworthy.
easiest, to trust,
Yeah.
and they're not always going to give you every piece of information that you think you need. And I think it does some cool stuff for T'Pol too. I think it moves her character forward and puts her in a position to, have to, really jive with Archer and come clean to him and put her trust in him and in the crew, and forces her to kind of confront where she's gone over the last 22, 23 episodes. So,
Yeah. I think that's probably my favorite thing about the episode is that the character development that we see with her, and how she's gonna have to work this out with Archer, and it just building that trust is cool in this episode.
agreed. I'm gonna go with. Oh no, you're up, right?
Yeah, I'm up.
Yeah, we're going into
Um,
round 5.
Round 5. Yeah, you're right. There's some tough. Um, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with. Oh man, this is tough. There's two staring me right in the face. I'm gonna go with. I've said that a million times, but I'm gonna go with Shadows of Bajhem.
Okay.
I think that's when you pair that with the Andorian incident, I think
Yeah.
that's a good 1-2 punch. I think it does some of the. It kind of flips to the again. Who you think is one person is another. So there's some um, subterfuge and some not completely honest business and dealings going on in this. So I think that's what we're kind of learning, and what the crew is learning is that not everyone is completely honest, and
Right.
it's not to be trusted. So yeah, I like that aspect of it, and I also like there's some good action stuff in it as well. But yeah, the twist and the kind of playing that cat and mouse game, which I think they do a lot in these episodes, is why I picked it.
I think it's a great choice. It's one of those episodes that if you were building like a curated list, it would be really hard to leave that off because it's such a big player
Yeah.
with the interspecies dynamics and the building blocks towards the Federation. Anything that puts the Andorians and the Vulcans and the Tellarites later on on the scene together and having to work through stuff becomes such a big pull for that show and such a foundational aspect of what they're trying to do. That this is it's a critical episode, I think, to building toward that end game.
Because when you when you think these are the foundational members of the Federation and they're spying on each other, spoiler alert, and I just think that it's funny with the weight behind that and what we know is going to happen. I think it just makes for a good episode. So yeah.
Agreed. Rob has joined the chat.
Welcome, Rob.
Yep, always good to see you, Rob. Appreciate you stopping by, voicing some support for Fallen Hero. A lot of discussion about, of course, anytime you bring up Enterprise, I feel like it's the standard issue. Jimmy77 saying Enterprise should have gotten 7 seasons. And,
I know. We always... You're preaching to the choir, Jimmy. That's yeah.
Yeah, we agree. And then the throwing out hope that maybe with this new age we find ourselves in, maybe they'll do something. Some other episodes getting thrown around out there as possibilities, one of which I think I'm about to pull and take. This episode's grown on me a lot. I think it's a little clumsy at times. I don't love all the writing in it. Some of the dialogue I think is a little silly. Some of the design choices maybe even a little bit silly. But I love the classic Star Trek premise of having to try to find a way to communicate with something that is not on the surface.
I think I know where you're going.
Approachable and something you can reason with. I think Vox Sola is an episode that is my choice. I think
I was hoping I could maybe get that in the later rounds, but yeah.
If we were doing this a couple of years ago, you probably would have, because I don't think I would have picked it. At least not until way later. But it's really grown on me. There's some really almost like majestic, epic stuff towards the back end of this episode when they do break through and find a way to communicate. I think it's a big Hoshi episode. Really tests her and puts her in a position to have to lean into her expertise, and that's kind of been an ongoing thread with this season. Like, does she have a place on the ship? Is this her comfort zone? Can she, find a way to, be confident in herself and be comfortable in her own skin on this in this job on this ship out in deep space? And this is kind of bringing to a head a lot of those struggles and forward steps, back steps that we've seen in some of the prior episodes. And she has a big breakthrough, and I think it's a big episode for her. Phlox has some good scenes, advocating for the creature and trying to, there's a good scene button heads with Malcolm about the right way to handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this episode's really grown on me over the years.
I also really like the actually the day-to-day aspect of the beginning. I think there's some cool stuff with Archer and him watching water polo and things like
Yeah.
that. Anytime we get to see like day-to-day things, like
True.
I said,
Agreed.
throw that in there. Yeah, but definitely echo what you said. If you can get past the production elements, some of the choices, not as good. But yeah, get past that, it's a um, solid episode.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
What do you got? Round 6.
Round 6, I am gonna go with. Man, I feel like I'm just in the teens. I'm just kind of backing up the middle. I'm gonna go Sleeping Dogs.
Okay.
This is a Klingon episode, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a Klingon
Um,
ship caught in the atmosphere of a gas giant.
yeah.
And,
Yeah. I think it's pivotal for. I mean, not often does. I mean, sometimes, but later on, they kind of Enterprise does the kind of building off the premise of like they don't with a prequel like there's always temptation to go to something that we all know and we've all seen a lot and maybe that's the case here, but for me I feel like it's an interesting kind of um, sci-fi concept setup with like a uh, a element of past track that we've kind of seen before, but I just like the sci-fi kind of setup, and I I like that the crew is willing to kind of help and bring some much needed I don't know true kind of Starfleet assistance,
yeah.
even this early in Enterprise. So that's why I picked it.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in this. Good Klingon interactions.
Yeah.
You know, Archer having to deal with the fact that sometimes that your help is not even really wanted. I think
Yeah.
like he's so eager to go out there and make a name for Earth and Starfleet and be a helping hand and dealing with the Klingons. It's not quite that clean. It's not as simple as, oh, these guys need help. They're going to be help. They're going to be grateful, and it's going to help our relations moving forward. And it's a building block. Having to deal with realizing that it's not always that simple, I think is a big deal for his character. And again, building on the premise of the series. And there's some cool Klingon design stuff on this ship. So a lot of haunted house kind of production design with the Klingon galley with all kinds of crazy stuff happening in there. And definitely like a pressure cooker kind of episode where the characters are, running up against time and it's a race to figure a way out. It's hot and sweaty and nasty and feel like you need a shower when it's over. I think it's an episode that again has kind of grown on people over the years. And I would include myself in that group. For me, kind of getting down the home stretch here in round 6.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff left though.
No, there's still some. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Detained, which is the Suliban refugee kind of story, which I remember being a big deal in the aftermath of this show premiered right after 9/11, which we just had a 20th anniversary for, and even in the months after that, there was just refugee situation, and there's certainly an apt reminder that not everybody who comes from a certain place or has a certain ethnicity or anything like that you should resist the temptation to lump them into a box and assume they are all the enemy. I think this episode does a good job of adding some texture to the Suliban and making it clear that something that I think Star Trek sometimes struggles with is painting an alien species with a wide brush and all Romulans are devious and all Klingons are warriors and all Suliban are time hopping genetically enhanced baddies, and Detained paints a very different picture and presents Suliban who are vulnerable and desperate and oppressed and just need a hand. And I think it's a successful episode on that level. Some good Archer stuff. Good guest star Dean Stockwell playing the head of the prison. where they find themselves.
Yeah.
So, decent little episode, I think.
I would have to agree. Yeah, I echo everything you said. It's nice to take kind of at this point like a 1 to 2 dimensional type of alien species and kind of flip it on its head a little bit, make it maybe 3 or 4 dimensional. So anytime we get to do that, I appreciate. So yeah.
Agreed. We got round 7.
Round 7, definitely getting pretty tough. I'm gonna go with Fight or Flight.
Good choice.
Try to get some color into that first half of the season. This episode I enjoy because it's early on. Enterprise does the thing where for a little bit that space and exploration is scary, and I think it's I think they do a good job here. But it's also there's some good stuff with Hoshi, I think, in this episode where we always get to see these Starfleet officers that are like eager to go on missions and just so brave and all these things. And it's nice to see like kind of her working through some difficulties, and she's not maybe not even want to be there, and she's just very frightened. It's a very scary episode too. I think there's some fun, not fun, but interesting production designs, and just it feels really scary.
Scary imagery.
So yeah, I do like that. I like the aspect that space is dangerous. It feels like that. Exploration is dangerous, and then also the Hoshi stuff I really enjoy. So yeah, I'm Fight or Flight.
Yeah, I think having a character who is truly green and, like you said, not eager to put on the spacesuit and put
dive
in
in,
harm's way. Yeah. Some of these characters are. There's a good scene in this where I think it's this episode where Trip is kind of like begging to go on the away mission, and Archer's got to tell him, no, you really have no place on this away mission. Your place is here. Making sure the ship's running, and it's just not. But he just wants to go. He wants to be involved and see the scary stuff and be on the forefront of the exploration. And meanwhile, you have Hoshi who will find any excuse not to go and just is not comfortable at all. And I think it was a good choice, and I'm glad Enterprise did that. And I think that show needed a character like that. And right off the bat, we get to explore those kinds of things so early on in the show, right after the pilot. And it's a good episode. Looking at 2 that are kind of sticking out like sore thumbs is the 2 that are above the rest for me. Trying to decide which one I prefer of the bunch, and I think I'm going to go with Breaking the Ice, which is a super low-key, quiet character episode. Some good Trip stuff, a lot of good Paul stuff. The revelation that she is set to be married. She's got an arranged marriage, which we know is the Vulcan stuff in the past. Like, that's not a terribly surprising reveal for us, but it is for the crew, for Trip, who discovers it by accident. And I think it's an important building block for their friendship and their relationship. Starting them off in being able to have difficult conversations, and up until this point, I think a lot of their interactions have come as part of the trio, as kind of Archer's confidants and people who are in meetings with him to discuss what's going on, the mission at hand, what the challenge of the day is. But giving those 2 characters space to be together as a duo was something that obviously becomes more and more of a factor later on. There's also that really good scene in that episode where they're writing they're recording the message back home for school kids, and I think that's one of my favorite little bits in Enterprise.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah.
Really at home early in that show as the prequel.
Yeah.
Grounding it in reality and all that good stuff.
That just adds like a really realism and a day-to-day aspect to that episode that I always love. Anytime we get to see something small like that, just it just really adds a nice little like heartwarming type of
Yeah.
touch that I really love. So that's my favorite part of that episode.
I think it is mine too. Absolutely, it's one of my favorite Enterprise moments, actually. And like we've talked about before,
Yeah.
it's sometimes the day to day, super casual life on the starship stuff is few and far between, and that's one of the kind of standout,
Mhm.
opportunities to see the crew doing something that's not, you know, they're not in crisis, they're not trying to, get out of a hairy situation. They're just kind of doing their thing and living life, and I like that a lot. Whenever they get to do that.
Round eight.
We're in round 8. This is it. We've got one more to go, and then we'll look at what's left and maybe talk about our favorite of the undrafted and wrap it up from there.
There's 2 here that I'm kind of thinking about. I'm gonna go with try to put some color on that third. I'm gonna go with Desert Crossing. Another one of those episodes. It does kind of feel kind of what we've seen before. They try to help or fix or something. Someone's ship, and then it just kind of a classic Star Trek episode kind of ensues. But I like the aspect that again Archer and crew are trying to help people as best they can with also establishing relations. I like this a lot of the production elements on the planet. I think their uniforms are cool. I like the play games. Like it's I don't know. There's some good stuff here. It does seem just kind of like a classic type of Star Trek setup, but I think there's some good stuff with Archer and crew learning that it's not always good to help people. And I think they do get kind of banged up throughout the season trying to help people, and this is just another one of those examples. So
yeah, they definitely, I think, lay some good breadcrumbs toward, like, we need a directive, we need a map to figure out like what's okay to get involved in and what's probably best to steer clear.
Yeah. When and where do we actually need to?
Yeah, and I think that's if you're going to do a prequel, if you're going to go back to when they decided to go back, like that's the whole purpose of it, to explore how they came up with the do's and don'ts, and what are the consequences to sticking your nose in something that is more complicated than it seems on the surface. Like you gotta have the facts before you get involved in these things. And think about the long range consequences of getting yourself involved. And Desert Crossing is a classic example of that. And it's also worth noting that it gave us the Trek Ranks music theme, which is
nice.
I'm a fan of that show, as we are. That music is ingrained in your head, and every time I watch the episode, that music comes on, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's definitely become the Trek Ranks anthem. It's a good one. Good guest star. Good location photography.
Yeah.
All that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good one. That was one of the ones I had my eye on as sort of my one I'd be happy to have here at the end. I'm gonna go with Strange New World. That
was the other episode I was thinking about.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page here, and I think we're gonna feel pretty good about what's left out there. Strange New World's a good early episode again, kind of hammering home these themes on, being overly eager. T'Pol ends up being right, as much as a killjoy as she is, as much of a killjoy as she may seem to be in the moment on the bridge when she's like, maybe we shouldn't go down there, maybe we should scan for a little bit first and get all the facts before we pile into a shuttle pod and head down there and just have a camp out. There's some cool messaging in there about not letting your prejudices drive your assumptions. I like the way that the Vulcan human tensions are explored through this pathogen that's in the air and bringing out people's paranoia. That's kind of a classic Star Trek trope that feels in tropey on one hand, but feels like it's being used to explore some of that, really ground level Enterprise stuff that needs to be worked out early in the show. And
Yeah.
I think Trip and T'Pol get some really good stuff to do in the caves, where the tensions are high and stuff's hitting the fan. And again, some good location photography. It's always cool to see the crew out in the sun and outside and not on a soundstage or on a one of those soundstagey planets. Actually being out in the elements always looks good on camera because we don't get it a ton in these later shows.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like a classic kind of setup where the crew beams down to the planet. They're really eager, obviously, like you said, but it's also like something on the planet is affecting them. And I think that's such a classic Star Trek kind of setup.
Star Trek story.
I think, especially early on in the show, I think I would definitely appreciate that for sure.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Is there one here of the undrafted, now that we both have our 8, that you're if we had to go one more round, where do you think you would
go? There's 2. I might go Civilization.
Yeah.
I think it feels kind of like a classic TOS. Go down to this primitive planet. Seems kind of humanoid. They get to. I think it gives some different looks to the crew. They get to, if I remember right, I don't think it was a bridge or something. It was like they got ribs on the forehead, and they got to kind of dress up and go down, and it feels kind of like a kind of a more or less TOS type of episode where they go down to a primitive planet. But again, there's some like kind of love story stuff that I could take or leave in that episode. But yeah, it just seems like one of those episodes where it's like, how do we work through this kind of prime? I forget what they call it, but prime directive type of thing, where how do we explore this, but we don't want to, harm the civilization in any way. So it's one of those things. So yeah, I'd probably go Civilization, or possibly 2 Days and 2 Nights. In 2 Days and 2 Nights, I probably like the Hoshi stuff, that kind of plot line a little bit better than the other one. But I'd probably go Civilization.
I think so too. I've always been mixed on it. Like I like the premise more than I like the execution. I think it's the episode in that early chunk of episodes that really leans into the let's put the crew in a position that would be a classic, this violates the prime directive situation, and let things go haywire. And let it be a lesson learned that's going to pay off down the road for other crews. But yeah, some good production design elements, some good costume design stuff. It does harken back to the original series in a really obvious way. I think with going down incognito and having a romance with somebody on the planet, and like there's some really TOS flavors in that story. I'm also kind of drawn a little bit to, I don't think it's a great episode, but I like Oasis in the sense that it has Renee Auberjonois in it. That's always nice to see. There's at least a good guest star performance. It's got a decent little mystery. I think it's kind of a safe standard issue episode, but there's some decent stuff in it. Some good moments for Trip and Paul in it. Like you said, 2 Days and 2 Nights, I think is a little bit of a mixed bag too. I think some of the storylines work better than others. I like Hoshi in it.
Archer stuff, I'm not the biggest fan of that.
Yeah. So that's kind of the tale of 2 episodes for me, like kind of literally split in half with what I think is fun and what maybe is a little more of a drag. Rogue Planet is kind of a tough sit, like it's a little dull. But an interesting concept. A lot of these episodes have decent concepts, good premises. But
on paper, you'd be like, oh, that might be
the execution
interesting.
Yeah, Fortunate Son with exploring the boomers and Travis's backstory. Like, there's some valuable stuff on paper there, but it just never quite comes to dynamic life, unfortunately. So I feel
really a lot of these episodes feel really middle of the road. I think, like you said, they're on paper. Like I feel like I'd love to see explore the Boomer stuff and the backstory with Travis. Like we
Yeah.
don't get a lot of that, but I just think that there's not enough there for me to be like, I want to pick that or I want to watch that or So it's just one of those things where I think it's just as interesting to have this conversation about the episodes that are still on the board as picking these episodes. So yeah,
I agree. This is a season that I think it was fun to do this with because it has those tiers, and you get into you get through the obvious ones pretty quickly, and then you get into a big batch that are that have their fans and have their positives and are strong on their in their own rights, but maybe don't get a ton of love. So it's interesting to see who goes where, and
yeah, because I
pecking
think
order.
some of these episodes, like the best of both worlds, you get some of these episodes that I think are Enterprise's best, maybe. In that conversation, definitely top 5 episodes of the series. But there's also some that are, I think, middle of the road. I think that you have to do pick an aspect of that episode and kind of highlight. So I think this is kind of my favorite season. I think it's easy to do Deep Space Nine season 4 or 5 and pick those best episodes. But it's also, I think these episodes or these seasons, I think are more fun because you get a little bit of just more color and more different types of episodes. It's not just the best of the best. It's also talking about episodes that we probably wouldn't normally talk about and trying to pick an aspect of that. And that's also, I like to do the episode or the seasons where it's just not very good.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Definitely. So I think that's gonna about do it for this week. I definitely encourage everybody to check out our playlist of prior fantasy episode drafts. We've had a lot of fun with these in the past. We've had good guests. Rob, who's in the or at least was in the chat, joined us for Voyager 1. Jim from Trek Ranks joined us for a TOS. Jen from Snap Trek and Caleb joined us for a season 4 big draft where he touched a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sure I'm forgetting. Who am I forgetting? I don't want to miss anybody, but there's a ton of them in there. Some with guests, some with just Dan and I. We've done more unconventional. We did the movies. We've done all 2-part episodes. We've done notorious episodes not too long ago. The episodes that have the most.
It's really fun.
That was a really good one. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That's maybe my favorite of all of them. We did the episodes that have the universally worst reputations and had to find good things in them to do that draft.
Which Jimmy was talking about in chat. Unexpected. I don't know if that was in that. But yeah, definitely check that out.
Agreed. Definitely agreed.
Yep.
All right. I think that'll do it for this week. We encourage everybody out there to consider joining our Discord server. We talk about that, I think, every week. If you're interested, if you are unfamiliar with Discord and want to learn more about it, or you have it but don't know how to, maneuver it, or feel like you need a brush up, you can send me a DM on Twitter at TrekFan4387. I'd be happy to walk you through it. I can get you an invitation if you'd like, and it's a cool place to interact with, little community of Star Trek fans who are positive and are interested in talking about the novels and the new stuff and what they're watching and whatever. And we occasionally have Trek After Dark hangouts, we call them, very casual, relaxed.
2 weeks.
We have one coming up in a couple weeks where we hang out in the evening and just kind of talk about whatever's on our minds. A lot of times it's about Star Trek. Sometimes it ends up not even being completely about Star Trek. We just got to get to know each other. And, it's super laid back and casual. But one of the benefits of being on our Discord server is you have access to those kinds of things. So let me know if you're interested.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. We got a fun topic lined up for Trek Live, and then also we'll be talking about the newest Lower Decks episode next week as well. So there's plenty of Star Trek content out there. I want to thank everybody in chat and people who are watching after the fact. Thank you guys. See you guys next week.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care.